Hey lovelies, how are you? My name is Bronte Spicer and I help parents instill powerful mindful tools and strategies so our families can be free of anxiety and depression. So, welcome. This video is going to be for all of you who are worried about traumatizing your kids. Often what can happen is when we do our own internal work as parents, we then are very conscious and aware of what's happening for our kids because we're revisiting the painful memories that we had as kids and we don't want to recreate the same thing. And then that can really kind of feel pretty overwhelming as parents when we're dealing with everything that we deal with as parents. And then on top of everything, including the mental load and everything, we also are dealing with this idea of traumatizing our kids, which isn't fun. So the first thing that I want to explain is that trauma is inevitable. Trauma is a part of the human experience. Trauma is going to happen anyway. It doesn't matter what we do with our kids, they are going to experience trauma, and as parents, we are going to play an inevitable part in their trauma. Um, I've got a quote from Ryan Hassan, who's one of the co-creators of embodied processing, which is another body-based approach to resolving trauma and improving mental health by the Centre of Healing. And this is in chapter 3 of my book, It's Okay to Cry. And the chapter is called Triggers and Trauma. And so he says that trauma is a part of the human experience. We're all on a spectrum, and part of the human experience is coming out of protection and into connection. The more we start to deal with this underlying survival drive, the more we open up to connect with ourselves and our fellow human beings, which then makes us feel safe. And so this is the process, this is the journey that you're on to do all of the internal work to process and face your fears, your biggest memories, the biggest stories that you have about yourself. And by doing that, you're shifting out of protection and into a space of connection. And so that's what you're doing. But at the same time, our kids are kids and they're at a younger age and they're having a different human experience and they're perhaps not going to have that insight that we do as adults. Um, and we can blame ourselves for when things aren't really going right. What's really important to know for those of you who are reading my book, you will know that deficiency stories are those negative core beliefs that we hold about ourselves, and that creates a web of or a belief system that that's how we see ourselves. And so our parenting, the way we see ourselves as parents, can be influenced by that belief system that we have about ourselves. So if we feel like we're like being the bad mum or the angry one all the time or the not fun one, or maybe you're feeling like you're just, not present enough or you're upsetting your kids, the question to ask is, what does that mean about me? What does that mean about me? If that was to say something about me, what would that be? So your answer could be something like, I'm a bad parent, or I'm failing as a parent. So those are they're deficiency stories. I'm failing and I'm bad. I'm a bad parent could be the deficiency story, and then that could come down to the core deficiency story, I'm bad. Or the deficiency story could be I'm failing as a parent, and the core deficiency story could be I'm failing. So it's really helpful to know where this worry, this surface level worry is coming from, because we often are in our heads trying to fix this problem. Like, how do we not traumatize our kids when in fact they're going to experience trauma? It's a part of life. Um, to remind you, trauma is an experience that overwhelms our capacity to cope. So we all have an experience of trauma. We all experience trauma. We've all had moments in our lives where we've been overwhelmed, and our body and brain have been so overwhelmed that it can't cope. It can't process the overwhelming amount of information and energy. And that's what trauma is. And then that's where we end up with unprocessed emotional memory in the body or trauma in the body. And so this is why the techniques like the Killer Bee Inquiries, the techniques that I teach in my book, are so helpful because we unhook from those stories. So your children are going to push your buttons. They are your teachers, just like we are their teachers. They're actually teaching us. They're helping, they're pointing us into the direction of where we're holding something. So when they're pushing our buttons, when they're when we're getting to those places of frustration and we just can't stand it anymore, that's that part that we are being life is inviting us to come towards and to hold and to love and to nurture. So it's like we want to get into this space of how can I hold myself in this situation. It's in those moments, yes, absolutely, it's about our kids. And at the same time, it's about us. How can we hold ourselves? How can we hold that rising sensation in our arms as we see them doing that thing that really annoys us? How can we hold the space for them as well as holding the space for the heaviness in our chest? How can we hold space for them as we're feeling this perhaps we would perceive as uncomfortable tingling in the face? So if you're not really relating to what I'm talking about when I talk about physical sensations in the body, that's okay. Go and watch my last week's video on if you can't feel anything. It's called dissociation, where we really have no awareness of what's happening in our bodies, and that's a natural occurrence from traumatic experiences where our body and mind disconnect as a way of surviving and protection. It's a way of protection. So if you are feeling like you're traumatizing your kids and you're really worried about it, I want you to know that they're going to be traumatized anyway. They are going to be traumatized anyway. It doesn't matter what you do. Um, and you can't stop that. What you can do is process your own pain of watching them in pain. So you can, you might even like to ask yourself, what does that mean about me that they're in pain? It could be like a reflection of, perhaps you don't like them, you don't like seeing them in pain because you felt that pain as a child. And then it's like, how can we reparent and how can we hold ourselves in those moments? How can we process those memories? And that I'll do another video on that, on how to process memories that come up so you don't feel stuck and stuck to that story that you tell yourself about that memory. Um, yeah, all right, I'm going to leave that there. If you found that helpful, please let me know. If you have any questions, please let me know. But if you take anything away from this video, that worry that you have about traumatizing your children comes from deficiency stories, like an old core deficiency story or an old core wound that probably happened when you were a kid, and it has nothing to do um, with your kid, like now, and like your child. Um, and the way the way to unhook yourself from that worry about traumatizing your children is to actually meet that original core wound within yourself, which is that deficiency story that perhaps is coupled with a memory that you hold in your mind. So, if you buy my book, you'll know how to process these memories, these painful memories, And if you want to just reach out via message, then feel free, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Thanks, lovelies. Take care. Bye.